Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for joining me today. After the last episode, we got our walnut boards for the entertainment center all flat on one side, ready to go. The next thing I need to do to continue the work on this project is to glue up a bunch of those boards into panels for the individual cases. Now, there are a couple of ways we can do this. In the last episode, I showed you how to make an edge square and straight to the face. Very simple way to make the edge joint would be to take two boards, plane each of those boards with one square and straight edge using the method from the last episode, and then you should be able to glue those two boards together if you planed both of those edges straight and square. But working by hand, we can take a little shortcut. We don't necessarily have to plane both of those edges on both of those boards perfectly square. Straight, yes, but square, not necessarily. If we use a method called match planing. Now what match planing does is you plane two boards at the same time, and by planing both edges at once, when you put those two edges together later, the angles are complementary, and what you end up with is a flat panel even if the edges aren't perfectly 90 degrees. Here's how it works. To illustrate the geometry behind the concept of match planing, let's imagine two boards whose edges have been match planed or planed together at the same time at an angle of 20 degrees from square. Now this angle is obviously not realistic, but the extreme exaggerated angle helps to demonstrate the concept. We'll call the acute corner of each board's edge angle A, and we'll call the obtuse corner of each board's edge angle B. Obviously, because the boards were planed together, the common angles A and B on both boards are identical. Also, because the two angles on each board's edge create three sides of a parallelogram, angle A and angle B are complementary, meaning the sum of angle A and angle B is 180 degrees. So when we open the match plane boards up like a book, angle A from one board complements angle B from the other board. The result is that the two reference faces, which are the faces that were touching when the two edges were planed, glue up into a flat surface, regardless of the actual angle that each of the edges was planed to. So let's take a look at a couple of boards that I'm going to match plane and glue up into a panel. Now these two boards have both been flattened on one face. You can see I've got one board here where the grain runs in opposite directions. So I've done two things here. First, I've tried to match the grain where the joint is going to be. One, I want the grain running in the same direction at the joint if I can help it. And two, I'm trying to match the grain so that once these boards are glued up, they'll join fairly seamlessly and you really won't be able to see that it's two boards and it'll look more like one panel. Now in the case of this entertainment center, I'm working on a center case here. This case side is actually going to be buried between two side cases except for the front 3 inches or so. So really it's not such a big deal if I don't have a good grain match at the joint because you're really never going to see this joint. It's going to be hidden. But just for good practice and just training your eye to look for these things, it's good to do it even if it's not going to be seen. Unless it's just not possible, then go ahead and put your best board forward. So as you can see here, I've got these lined up. What I think is a good grain match and what's going to be the final orientation. So I'm going to mark them with a cabinet maker's triangle just to keep that orientation. And I'm also going to put 2 lines in there because I have other boards as well that I'm going to mark similarly, so I want to make sure that I can distinguish one from the other. So I can put 2 lines in here or different marks in addition to the cabinet maker's triangle just to be able to orient these boards. And the benefit of the cabinet maker's triangle is if these 2 boards get separated, not only does it show you how they go back together, which edges go back together, but it also points in the direction of the grain, how you want to plane. So, and we can use this triangle for other things as well later on. Okay, so as I showed in the diagram, once I have these two boards set together and the orientation that they're going to go, what I want to do is put the two flat faces together, closed like a book. So I want to plane the edge here where they're joined. So I'm going to close those two boards like a book. And I'm actually going to stand them up so that I can align that edge. I'm just using my bench top to align that edge as best as possible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a couple of hand screw clamps and I'm going to pop them up here just to hold the two boards in position. And I'll put one on either end. Now I'll flip the whole assembly over and put it in my crochet so that I can plane the edge. Now, similarly to what we did in the last episode, I want to straighten this edge. Doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly square to the flat face like what we did in the last episode, but it does need to be perfectly straight as we can get it. So similar to the last episode, I'm going to start by planing in the center to create a slight hollow. Alright, now that I have the whole edge planed and hollowed, I'm going to switch to my joiner plane. Now this is very similar to the tri-plane that I used in the last episode. The main difference being that the iron is not cambered. So this iron is ground and honed straight across because I want to make a flat surface here. So I only use my joiner plane for making joinery surfaces. I don't use it for truing edges. If I need to square an edge, I use the tri-plane with the cambered iron. If I need to make a joinery surface like this edge joint here, then I'll use the tri-plane. Now I'll use the joiner plane. Sorry. My joiner plane happens to be about 8 inches longer than my tri-plane, but it's really not all that necessary, especially on an edge joint this short. So again, I'll start in the middle. You can see that it's hollow. So I'll start cutting edge to edge. And my goal with this is to plane until I get 2 long continuous shavings, one from each board. Right now I'm only planing the ends. Alright, now I'm going to check this to see how straight it is before I take it out of the clamps. Like I said before, it does not need to be perfectly square, but it does need to be as close to straight as you can get it. Because when you have 2 boards clamped together like this and you plane the edges at the same time, any error, any hollow in here is going to be doubled when you flip those boards back open and put them one on top of the other. So you want to get this as straight as you can. So that looked pretty straight to me when I checked it with the straight edge. So now I'll unclamp them and put them on top of each other. So with the 2 edges now match planed, you can see we get a nice, tight, practically seamless joint. And if we put a straight edge across those boards, the panel ends up nice and flat.